Valera had always believed silence was the cleanest form of dignity. In her people's culture, grief was not something to be shared. It was treated like a malfunction, unfortunate, personal, and best resolved alone. When a mate died, the survivor was given a fixed mourning cycle. Food would be delivered, official condolences would be recorded, then life moved on. No visits, no conversations, no witnesses. That was how it had always been. So when the mourning cycle for her husband ended and the door chime sounded days later, Valera thought it must be a system error. She stood slowly from the low resting platform, her movements careful, controlled. The house felt too large now. Every surface reflected memories she was not allowed to touch. She adjusted her outer mantle, smoothing it into perfect lines, then moved to the entrance. The display showed a single figure standing outside. A human. Valera blinked, her inner membranes fluttering in surprise. Humans were not part of her immediate social circle. They were allies, colleagues, sometimes friends. But they were loud, emotional, and strangely informal. Not the sort of beings who appeared uninvited at a widow's door. She hesitated before opening it. The door slid aside with a soft tone. The human stood there holding nothing, no ceremonial object, no data pad, no flowers which she knew humans sometimes used for death rituals. He was tall by human standards, his posture straight but uncertain, as if he were not sure whether he was welcome. "Valera," he said gently. "I'm Ethan." She knew his name already. Ethan Hale, her husband's human friend. They had served together on multiple joint missions. She had seen them laugh together in the common areas of ships, share meals, argue over navigation choices. Ethan had been there often, a familiar presence orbiting her husband's life. But that had been before. Now his presence felt wrong, unscheduled, improper. "You are outside the permitted morning interval," Valera said, her voice steady. "There is no obligation for you to be here." "I know," Ethan replied. "I'm not here because of obligation." He did not move forward. He did not ask to enter. He simply stood there waiting. Valera studied him. Humans were difficult to read, but this one carried something heavy in his eyes. Not urgency, not curiosity, something quieter. "Why have you come?" she asked. Ethan took a slow breath. "Because he was my friend." That answer was insufficient by her cultural standards. Friendship ended with death. Emotional ties were archived, not maintained. "And I thought," he continued, choosing his words carefully, "that maybe you shouldn't be alone." Valera felt a sharp, unfamiliar sensation in her chest cavity. Alone was the expected state. Alone was correct. "I am not alone," she said automatically. "I am functioning." Ethan nodded. "I figured you would be." There was no challenge in his voice, no attempt to correct her. That unsettled her more than disagreement would have. After a long pause, Valera stepped aside. "You may enter," she said, briefly. The door closed behind him. Inside, the house was immaculate, too immaculate. Every object was exactly where it had been placed during the mourning cycle, untouched. Her husband's personal items had been sealed according to protocol. No traces of disorder remained. Ethan looked around slowly, his gaze respectful. He did not comment. They stood there, two beings from different worlds, unsure of what came next. Valera gestured toward a seating surface. Ethan sat when invited, his movements careful, as if he feared breaking something fragile. She sat across from him, maintaining the proper distance. Silence stretched between them. In her culture, silence meant closure. It meant the ritual was complete. But this silence felt unfinished. Ethan did not rush to fill it. He did not offer condolences. He did not recite any official phrases from the Alliance database. He simply sat there, hands resting on his knees, breathing evenly. Minutes passed. Valera became aware of her own breathing, too shallow, too fast. "You are not speaking," she observed. Ethan smiled faintly. "Didn't want to interrupt." "Interrupt what?" "Whatever you're carrying." The words struck her harder than she expected. "I am carrying nothing," she said, a little too quickly. The morning cycle is complete. Ethan's expression softened. On paper, maybe. She felt irritation rise. Humans had a habit of questioning systems that worked. My people do not externalize grief, she said. It is inefficient. I know, Ethan replied. He told me. Her irritation faltered. He spoke of me to you, all the time. That was unexpected. Her husband had never indicated such openness. Ethan leaned back slightly, eyes unfocused as if looking at a memory. He used to talk about how calm you made him, said being with you felt like standing in the eye of a storm. Valera's throat tightened. That phrase was not a formal compliment. It was personal, intimate. He also said you pretended not to notice when he messed up the nutrient calibrations, Ethan added, a small smile appearing. But you always fix them later. Valera felt a strange warmth spread through her chest. He was careless with calibrations, she said quietly. Yeah, Ethan chuckled. He was, nearly poisoned me once. Wrong mineral ratio. Despite herself, a sound escaped her, short, sharp, almost like laughter. She froze. That sound was not permitted during mourning. Ethan noticed. He did not react, did not comment, he simply continued. He was proud of you, he said, not in the formal way your people use, in a softer way, like he liked knowing you were stronger than him. Valera looked down at her hands. They were trembling slightly. No one speaks of the deceased this way, she said. It disrupts emotional containment. Humans do the opposite, Ethan said. We talk more, because silence feels like losing them twice. Losing them twice. The phrase echoed inside her. You speak as if grief is meant to be prolonged, she said. It is, Ethan answered simply. Just not alone. Something shifted inside Valera then, like a fracture forming beneath a smooth surface. She felt pressure building behind her eyes, a sensation she had never allowed to progress. Her people trained themselves from childhood to halt emotional surges before they manifested physically. She stood abruptly. This interaction has exceeded its purpose, she said. You should leave. Ethan rose immediately. No argument, no offense taken. Okay, he said, I will. He moved toward the door, then paused. I'll be around, he added, if you need someone to sit quietly again. Valera did not respond. The door closed. The silence returned. But it was no longer clean. She moved slowly through the house, trying to restore equilibrium. She ran diagnostics on environmental systems, adjusted lighting levels, reviewed mission logs, anything to reassert control. It didn't work. Her thoughts kept returning to small, insignificant details Ethan had mentioned. Nutrient calibrations, storm metaphors, casual pride. These were not the sanctioned memories. These were personal. Her breathing grew uneven. She sat on the floor without meaning to. The pressure behind her eyes intensified, spreading downward into her chest. Her body reacted in ways she did not authorize. Moisture gathered, vision blurring. No, she whispered, the word barely formed. But the sensation broke free anyway. Her chest hitched. A sound tore out of her that was not speech, not laughter, not anything she recognized. It hurt. It burned. It felt like something inside her was collapsing and expanding at the same time. She pressed her hands against her face, ashamed, terrified. Crying was forbidden. Yet it did not stop. Minutes passed, or hours. She could not tell. When the wave finally receded, she was left exhausted, her body heavy, her thoughts raw. She expected emptiness. Instead, she felt something else. Not relief, not closure, but connection. The next day, Valera found herself standing outside her own home longer than necessary, staring at the corridor where Ethan had stood. The idea unsettled her. Humans were dangerous in ways weapons were not. They did not attack defenses. They bypassed them. Against her better judgment, she accessed the Alliance directory and located Ethan's temporary quarters on the station. She stood outside his door for several seconds before activating the chime. It opened almost immediately. Ethan looked surprised, then concerned. Valera. I require clarification, she said stiffly. About what? Why humans believe grief should be shared. He studied her face, noticing the faint discoloration around her eyes. His expression softened. "Do you want to come in?" he asked. She nodded. As the door closed behind her, Valera realized something that unsettled her deeply. For the first time since her husband's death, she did not feel like she was malfunctioning. She felt like she was beginning something. And she did not yet know how dangerous that might be. Valera sat across from Ethan in his small living space, her posture straight, her hands folded carefully in her lap. The room was different from her home. It was less ordered. Objects were not placed with perfect symmetry. A mug sat near the edge of a table. A jacket was draped over a chair instead of stored away. Nothing was dirty or chaotic, but everything felt lived in. This, she realized, was how humans existed, not controlled, not sealed. Ethan offered her a warm drink. She accepted it out of courtesy, wrapping her fingers around the container even though she did not need the warmth. The sensation grounded her. "You asked why humans share grief," Ethan said gently. "There isn't one simple answer." "I require one," Valera replied. "Or I will continue to experience system instability." He smiled slightly. "Fair enough." He took a moment, choosing his words. "Humans don't believe pain disappears when you hide it. We think it grows, quietly, until it breaks something important." Valera considered this. "My people believe exposure weakens the individual." "Sometimes it does," Ethan said honestly, "but sometimes strength comes from being seen." She looked down at the surface of her drink. "I experienced an emotional release after you left." Ethan did not look surprised. He did not look alarmed. "That sounds about right," he said softly. "It was uncontrolled," she continued, "undignified, and afterward," she paused, searching for accuracy, "I did not feel empty." Ethan nodded. "Yeah." That single word carried understanding without explanation. Silence settled between them again, but this time it felt different. It was not rigid. It was shared. Over the following days, Valera found herself returning. Sometimes she brought questions. Sometimes she brought nothing at all. Ethan never seemed to mind. He did not push her to speak. He did not retreat when she was quiet. He simply stayed. They talked about small things at first. Missions, food preferences, human music, which Valera found confusing but oddly emotional. In return, she explained the structure of her people's social systems, the logic behind emotional restraint. Ethan listened carefully. One evening, without planning to, Valera asked, "Do humans ever stop grieving?" Ethan thought for a long moment. "No," he said, "but it changes shape." "How?" "It stops being sharp," he explained. "It becomes something you carry instead of something that cuts you." That description stayed with her. As days turned into weeks, Valera noticed changes not only in herself, but in how others reacted to her. Word spread quietly that she had been seen with a human repeatedly. Some of her people avoided her gaze. Others watched with thinly veiled concern. Finally, an elder approached her. "You are disrupting cultural balance," the elder said. "Your mourning cycle has concluded." "I am aware," Valera replied calmly. "Then why do you continue to seek companionship?" Valera hesitated. Then, for the first time in her life, she answered honestly instead of correctly. "Because I am still grieving," she said. The elder stared at her, unsettled. "You risk weakening yourself." Valera thought of the nights she had spent sitting in silence with Ethan, of the way memories now felt less like wounds and more like threads connecting past and present. "I feel stronger," she said. The elder left without another word. The next gathering happened almost by accident. Ethan had mentioned a human custom called a remembrance dinner. No speeches, no rituals, just people sharing food and memories. Valera found herself thinking about it long after the conversation ended. She sent out a single, careful invitation to a few individuals who had served alongside her husband. She did not label it as a memorial. She called it a meeting. To her surprise, they came. They sat stiffly at first, uncertain, guarded. Ethan stayed quiet, letting Valera lead. She felt her pulse race as she spoke. "This gathering is not required," she said. "You may leave at any time." No one did. She began by sharing one memory, a small one. The way her husband used to pause before entering new environments, always checking systems twice because he worried about others more than himself. The room was silent. Then another spoke. Then another. Ethan shared last. He told a story about a failed jump calculation and how Valera's husband had taken responsibility even though the error wasn't his. He laughed softly while telling it. His eyes shone. Something changed in the room. Tension eased. Postures relaxed. Sounds emerged, soft, unplanned expressions of emotion. No one recorded the event. No protocols were filed. Yet something irreversible had begun. Over the next cycles, similar gatherings occurred, quietly, carefully. Sometimes humans were present, sometimes not. Always the pattern was the same. Grief, when shared, did not weaken them. It connected them. Reports reached the Alliance Council. Analysts noted shifts in post-loss recovery rates among non-human species exposed to human mourning practices. Emotional stability increased. Long-term performance improved. The humans, as usual, took no credit. Eventually, Valera was asked to speak before the council. She stood in the vast chamber, aware of countless eyes watching her. Ethan sat in the observers section, his presence a steady point in the distance. "My people believed grief was a private failure," she began. "We believed silence preserved strength." She paused. "We were wrong." A ripple moved through the chamber. "Humans do not treat grief as weakness. They treat it as proof of connection. They remain present when others withdraw. They speak when silence becomes harmful." She looked directly at the representatives of multiple species. "They do not conquer pain," she said. "They accompany it." The chamber was silent when she finished. Later, as policies shifted and cultural exchanges expanded, humanity gained a new reputation among the stars. They were not the strongest species. They were not the most advanced. They were the ones who stayed. In the quiet hours of artificial night, Valera stood with Ethan in a newly created memorial garden. Lights glowed softly among living plants from many worlds. She did not feel whole, but she felt real. "I will always miss him," she said. Ethan nodded. "That means he mattered." Valera looked at the stars above them, no longer distant, no longer cold. For the first time, grief did not feel like an ending. It felt like proof that love had existed, and that, she realized, was humanity's greatest legacy.